Hey, podcast listeners, so happy you joined us today on the show. A couple things before we get started. If you are an LGBTQ person or you're a parent of a queer kid, you can actually go to my Patreon. Go to patreon.com/Joanna Whaley. And for as little as $1 a month, I can basically become an online pastor for you. You go to patreon.com/Joanna Whaley. Another way, if you're somebody who doesn't want to go to Patreon, but you want to support the show, there's all kinds of work that I do that is free of charge for people, but there's costs involved. You can actually go to joannawhaley.com/pay, and you can cover people's bills that are created by the work that I do. So today we're going to have a great conversation about Tim Walz and bridging the gap between LGBTQ people and Christian nationalism. Let's have a conversation about that on the other side of the music.
Alive and I'm thriving. No fear. There's no need for hiding. I'm not what they told me.
Alrighty, friends. Welcome. I'm so happy you joined us on the show here today. If you're somebody who watches the show, I don't share a ton about some of the personal stuff that's going on with me. If you're watching, you're like, what the hell's going on with my face? I had some work done on my face this weekend, and my lips are crazy, swollen today. But the show must go on. So here I am with like super swollen lips today. So give me a lot of grace there. If you're somebody who watches me and knows this is not what my face always looks like, but you got to continue the show. Hey, also a couple things. I'm working with some new technology on the show today, so give me a little grace if I have weird pauses and I have to fix stuff. I once again had this huge flood in my studio this last week and had to have a plumber come out and do all this work and fix a bunch of stuff. But I'm back in action, so I have some new technology that I'm working through right now that are on the show. We've also added a streaming platform for the live show. Welcome to all my friends on Instagram. So happy that you are here. This week, if you were watching the news, presidential candidate, Vice President Kamala Harris picked Tim Walz to be her running mate for this upcoming presidential election. And if I'm honest with you, I was like, when it first happened, I was a little bit disappointed that it wasn't Pete or what, I was honestly a little disappointed because I was like, who is this guy, right? Who is Tim Walz? And I had no idea. But then I began to do some research and learn a little bit about this guy who is going to be running with Kamala Harris for president. And the more I began to hear about this guy, more hope I began to have about what was coming and my kind of how I felt about where we were going became a little more hopeful. And there's something that Tim Walz has said in the last week that really has rung with me. And it kind of spurred the topic of today's show. And if you watch the show live on TikTok at Joanna Whaley Music, on YouTube, behind the scenes, or on Facebook or Instagram, I'll get to your questions. We'll get to all of, we'll let people in here in just a moment. But he said something that just really resonated with me. And I'm actually going to play a clip of a couple things he said first and really let that set us up for where we're going and what I want to talk about today, because I think it's so easy, especially right now, as someone who's post-evangelical. And if you're new to my channels, or you've never heard my show before or watched me live, I'm a former evangelical pastor and I'm a transgender woman. And all of that at times can can create an environment of saying like Christians are bad, evangelicals, and I'm still a Christian, but like it can create an environment to say like Christians are just bad people. And like I can look at people from my past and think like, oh, they're just really bad people. And sometimes you have things you want to say in your head about some folks that about how they treat you, especially if you watch any of my my channels. Like if you watch my TikTok channels, the comments I get are just absolutely hateful at times. But Tim Walz said something this week, and I'm going to play you a clip, and it really spoke to me. Let's listen to it right here.
So I think this is going back to the bread and butter, getting away from this division. We do not like what has happened where we can't even go to Thanksgiving dinner with our uncle because you end up in some weird fight that is unnecessary. and I think bringing back people together, well, it's true. These guys are just weird.
But these are our neighbors and our relatives. And at heart, they're good people. They're not mean-spirited. They're not small. They're not petty like they hear on stage. They're angry, they're confused, they're frustrated, they feel like they got left behind sometimes. But we can get out there, reach out, make the case. And for one thing, don't ever shy away from our progressive values.
So true. I heard this week, and it resonated with me, like this idea that these are not bad people. And what they're hearing from a stage is not representative of who they are. And it can be hard, especially sometimes with the things you hear and the things people say to you. It can be so challenging to see people as good people when they're saying absolutely sometimes terrible things. But it's because of what examples they're given. So, for example, I'm speaking from a post-evangelical lens, right? As someone who used to be an evangelical pastor, I've learned that there are really great people who will do anything for you, give you the shirt off of their back, they'll give you everything. Like they will work tirelessly to give you a good life, but at the same time, there are influences in their lives. And I've come to see this, and I've come to notice this the more I am out of the evangelical world, is I'm watching and I'm hearing pastors repeat some of the rhetoric that we hear in elections, in the election season, that they're hearing from presidential candidates. And pastors have immense influence. Pastors have an immense amount of influence. And it is up to the hearer to do something with it. But because of the power dynamic at times in Christianity, the pastor and what the pastor says is so heavy and holds so much weight in people's lives. If the pastor or the politician who holds a place of authority in someone's mind, or they look up to that person, if that person begins to share things and speak against other human beings in such a way where they're speaking against humanity, it can lead good people down a path of hateful rhetoric. And there has just continued to be this widening chasm between good people, Christian people, and the LGBTQ people because of pastors and politicians and the words that they use. I would love to hear from you if you're watching live, online, at Facebook, on Instagram. Someone says, bridge the gap. What does the gap look like to you? I suspect you expect a concession from one side. It's a good question. What is the gap? Right now we have this massive amount of mistrust. We have this us versus them mentality. And I think when I hear somebody like Tim Walz speak, I hear someone who thinks, oh, like they see the other side as a human being. And I'm trying to do that work too. I talked about this a couple weeks ago, just about how I'm trying to do the work too, on my end of the argument, to see people as human beings and see them as like, and hear them and not like the idea, but like the person. Hi, Liam. Welcome in.
Hello. Is it Joanna?
Yes, it is.
Great. How are you today?
I'm great.
Yeah, I was just listening in on your conversation about VP choice, Harris's VP choice. I'm on the opposite side of the aisle. I want to try to find some common ground with you. However, though, we can have a civil conversation. I just align more with, I would say, the ideas of securing our country that Trump, I think, would bring. And go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fine. Like, you can have that political persuasion, but I want to know, like, how do you see your end of the political spectrum trying to bridge a gap that is really wide right now between LGBTQ people and I'm talking specifically the Christian community, because there's a huge gap there. And that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why I'm interested in this Tim Walz, guys, because there's some evidence there of doing the work of trying to unite these groups of people.
I think that Christians follow the teachings of Christ. And I think in the teachings of Christ, it boils down to a couple of things. First and foremost, you either believe who Christ is, who he says he is, or you don't. If you don't, then the conversation does not go any further.
Sure.
Can we agree on that?
Yeah, sure.
So Christ, in the views of being a Christian, you either believe in sin, okay, or you do not believe in sin. And that's what it comes down to.
So my question to you is this. Do you believe that heteronormativity is the preferred option from Jesus?
I think that's what it says in the Bible, yes.
Okay, where does Jesus say it?
In his own exact words, that's really a misconception of what Jesus, the writings were written down through Christ's teaching or through men like Paul the Apostle, who did martyr Christians prior to becoming saved, okay? Then being unalived himself for his belief in Christ by the people that he sided with prior to.
Okay, so putting that aside, do you think it's possible for Christians and LGBTQ people to treat each other with much more kindness and respect than we see currently?
Absolutely.
Okay, how do you, as somebody who professes biblical Christianity, as you probably call it, or more of an evangelical narrative of Christianity, how do you, and I'm going to tell you as a progressive Christian, as an LGBTQ person, I'm trying to do the work of saying, I hear your theology, I don't love your theology, but what I'm trying to do is give you the space to believe what you believe. And I'm trying to, I guess I'm trying to see you as a good person, even though I don't love your theology. How can you, as an evangelical Christian, do the same for me as a progressive Christian?
I will say this. Great question. I will say that I think that I am a human being and I'm fallible. There's sometimes I'm going to come on TikTok and I'm going to troll people.
Are you one of my trolls, Liam?
No, I am
Okay,
not.
all right.
I've actually never been to your page before.
Okay. Well, I'll be watching for you. I'm watching you, friend.
No, I'm not. I'm not a troll. But I'm going to tell you what, too. I have also grown up a lot. Okay, I can have a conversation with you, and I hope as adults, I can talk to you about my concerns and my fears about stuff that's being pushed forth within the LGBTQI plus community. And then you can say to me, I have concerns as well, Liam, about people that have been harming people in my community. And we have to listen to each other, okay? We have to listen to we have to listen to each other, you know?
Because it is a reality, and you'll never hear me shy away from sometimes how the community of progressive Christianity struggles with making space for you. So, Liam, I appreciate the call. I got some other stuff I got to get to here, but that is it, and that's how it happens right there. Like, that is how we bridge the gap. When people ask, like, how do you bridge the gap? That's what I am talking about. And I am seeing my friends on Facebook right now. I am going to work on the audio at our commercial break to see if I can get you into the proper audio, and I'll do my best to make sure you can hear the callers. I'm blocking people that are saying terrible things, but I think that, you know, there's a lot of question marks. And one of the things that I think, getting back to kind of the topic at hand, right? Getting back to Tim Walz and hearing some of the things that he said, like, one of the first things that tipped me off to be like, oh my gosh, like, this guy kind of brought two worlds for me. If you're new to my show, I am a trans woman. I'm not quiet about that. I don't, you know, I'm not worried about hiding that or anything. But I used to play football, right? And football, yes, I did. I played football. Trenton High, go Trojans. But I played for the football team, and that was a very, like, masculine, like, you know, beat your chest environment, right? And I walked in that environment, and it was very, like, heteronormative culture where, like, you couldn't like, even if you seemed just like the tiniest bit like not straight, like, you were ridiculed for it. And when I heard this week that Tim Walz was a high school football coach and advised and started his school's first gay-straight alliance, that blew my mind. Because I'm thinking about, and when he said he did this because he knew the message it would send to have a football coach involved in the gay-straight alliance. And that is a big deal, because I come from that environment. I come from kind of like that football culture when I was in high school. That would have been a big deal if, like, our coach would have done that. I definitely would have felt much more safe and comfortable to talk about my queerness. And what I'm seeing here is an advocate. I see in Tim Walz, I see an advocate. And the reason I think that this is important is because Tim Walz also, to me, has this way of speaking that really connects with people from some of my conservative evangelical backgrounds. Hi, friend. Welcome in.
Welcome. Nice to talk to you.
You too.
Yeah, it's really interesting from an LGBT Christian perspective, because we see kind of on the other side a lot of this hatred, and it seems like vitriol without direction. And we kind of see that with the Olympic boxer who's a cis woman. I forget her name. I know she's sent from Algeria.
Ayman Khalif.
Yep. That's it. Yep. Mm-hmm. And it just seems like there's all this sort of vitriol without direction. And when Tim Walz comes up, I had the opportunity to meet Tim Walz very briefly on my way into a Gophers game.
Awesome.
Yeah, and him being like, I'm part of a gay-straight alliance, and talking about these right-wing people, they're scared and frustrated. They're not bad people. And so
exactly. Nailed it. Yep.
As LGBT Christians, we have to we stand on this tightrope where we have to advocate for being us, being ourselves, but also being loving, forgiving, and understanding of all the people that have a hard time doing the same towards us.
Oh, totally. I've been so, I've been encouraged to watch someone. I don't know if you had this experience, but like watching someone who reminds me of like some of the like toxic masculinity culture I used to be in, very much like has the image and like speaks, and I don't know if you saw the video, he's like, this is a plug from a car. I'm like, that's such like a
it sounds like my dad.
Yeah, it sounds like, and here's the thing, it's and this is gonna be an overgeneralization. It sounds like a Trumper in a sense. It sounds very like innocent, you know what I'm saying? Like dad Trumper. It sounds like that guy who's fixing his car in the garage all day type of dude. And I think that's why I feel like Tim Walz has a unique is going to have a unique ability to speak to people who don't want us to have rights in the world.
Well, he's unique because he's authentic, and he's genuinely the guy that's getting out and fixing the car, genuinely the guy that's saying his daughter no turkey special in Minnesota and making jokes.
That's vegetarian. Yeah.
And also, he's supported LGBT people for years, and he's authentically who he is, and he's authentically welcoming to all people. And so that kind of presence on the national stage, I don't think we've seen before.
Right. And it's my hope is because even listening to the guy talk, he reminds me a lot of the Christian men that I pastored in my old churches. And for those that are just joining, I was an evangelical pastor for 20 years before I came out as a trans woman. And so like the way Tim Walz speaks and the way he looks at the world is very similar. So Alex, thank you for calling, friend. And,
thank you so much.
And, you know, so it reminds me, I want to play another clip. I got all kinds of fun clips here today. And it just reminds me, like, when I hear Tim Walz speak, I hear the evangelical Christian guy who's like in the biker ministry. We had a biker ministry at my church. I don't know if anyone else did, just me. But anyways, so no, it says no. We did, like 2 churches I had biker ministries. How strange. Anyways, you know, it's like God's Angels or something like that was their name. I don't know. I can't remember their name. I'm going to play you a clip from Tim Walz, and I just love it. So let's take a listen. This was at a rally recently.
I see those old white guys. Some of us are old enough to remember when it was Republicans who were talking about freedom. It turns out now what they meant was the government should be free to invade your doctor's office. In Minnesota, we respect our neighbors and their personal choices that they make. Even if we wouldn't make the same choice for ourselves, there's a golden rule. Mind your own damn business.
I love that clip. I really do. Because doesn't that sound like... I don't know if it's me. This is a live podcast. I'm coughing on the show. But doesn't that just remind you of the like roughneck guy that like seems a little bit conservative? I don't know. I'm here for it. Will, welcome in.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I am somewhat reluctant to say that Walz can necessarily bridge, because when you say can he bridge between LGBTQ plus people and Christians, I would say, I mean, obviously the implication is, sort of conservative Christians. I would assume that's assumption. Now, he is ELCA, and ELCA has the reputation of being very liberal. But I think when we're discussing the mainline churches, we have to understand majority ELCA people voted for Trump in 2016. When the ELCA clergy,
it's the Reconciling in Christ, the RIC sect of the ELCA, that is much more progressive.
Sure. But I was just saying that the clergy in most mainline churches tend to lean left, especially when you compare it to the people, especially when you're dealing with places like UMC, ELCA, UCC might be a bit different, but Episcopalian. The congregants are probably to the right of their pastor. Though I'm not sure if
absolutely they are. Yep. I preach in these churches, and sometimes that I, as a trans woman preaching, sometimes it's a hard sell for people sometimes.
Right, but I'm not sure if Walz probably isn't going to appeal to conservative Lutherans. Like, there was this article that came out. It's like, Walz is a member of the ELCA, the most progressive Lutheran church. And then they said, let's ask what Wells and Missouri Lutheran Synod think of him. These people who definitely have no strong opinions on the evangelical Lutheran church. Right? So I think that he could maybe appeal to some degree to like certain swing voters. He doesn't have a very radical face to fight, despite coming from a very, very progressive wing of the party. And I'm always somewhat reluctant when I think certain progressives put a bit too much stock in the, let's be honest here, the like progressive white guy from a rural state. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying that it's bad, and I'm not saying that, it's bad to be a progressive white guy, obviously. But I am saying that the idea that this aesthetic can necessarily win over conservatives, I don't know if that's entirely accurate. I think it can appeal to moderates, and I think that it's right. Walz certainly has more appeal than he would if he was a black woman with the same policies, and he is able to sort of move in a more leftward direction that other people might not be allowed to. But there is the fact that he is understood by a large section of conservatives to be a very, very left-wing figure. Now, I think he could appeal to like moderates and sort of apolitical people as, come on, this guy can't be an extremist, look at him.
Right. And that gets to kind of what I'm saying here today is that, so even if he interacts with the more moderate base, to me, it's if I'm talking about like evangelical Christians that aren't like deep down the rabbit hole, because there's a lot of evangelical Christians, and it happens to me every day. I get a message from someone who says, hey, I'm part of this big church, but like I want to be an ally, but I don't feel safe to be, you know what I'm saying? And so like, it probably would swing someone like that. And I think that those are the people that can change things. And it is going to be a long game. And so, yeah, Will, thank you for your thoughts. And it's, he's right. It's going to be hard to move someone who is really deep down the rabbit hole. Like, imagine trying to get me to vote for Trump. It wouldn't happen in a million years. You know what I'm saying? But this will move the needle on folks who are trying to like find that middle ground. Heidi on Facebook says Tim Walz is not an easy target for those reasons, and I think that's because of just the kind of ability to speak. I always tell people sometimes when I'm interacting, and I do interact still with a lot of evangelical Christians, but I always tell people that I speak evangelical. I speak